Gifted in every way she had to be as a farmer's wife, relentlessly hard work, including incredible needlework where she would make little dresses for babies to be buried in because infant mortality was so high at that time. It's a very hard life. My mom's family were all avid readers. They had the newspaper delivered to their house every day. We learned this recently. A sharecropper, pilot, would drop the newspaper in their farmyard every day. And they would read the newspaper every day to cover. And they read together at night. These habits never stopped for our mom, who read the newspaper every day, who was better informed than any of us, and read in bed every night. I cannot begin to imagine how many books she read in her life and how many poems she could recite from memory.
Good job. I'm Pat Cummings, and I'm Virginia's only begotten son. And I also work in Tacoma in research and development, and it's just so great to look out here and see all these people I haven't noticed are here, and my dear friends, so thank you for coming. You mentioned the Red River. This is a little piece, it looks like an eraser, but it's a little piece of sandstone. Lance, you can tell me what this is, but it's, when they crossed the Red River, they were so impressed with how red the rock was that Granddad went and carved out a little piece, and that was in her desk. And I just found out a couple of years ago. I said, "What is that?" She said, "Oh, I've had that. That's the Red River." And she said, "Take it. Here it is." The Dust Bowl was rough. I have as a screensaver at work pictures of the Dust Bowl, and people say, "Why do you have that?" And I say, "I have that because I realize I get frustrated with a meeting, and I look at what my mother was going through when she was a young person and how rough that was." And it was really rough, the details of the damp cloths, and they were lucky enough that they had a spring, and so they were able to make it through that. We share books, and I shared the book, Ethan's book, The Best and Worst of Times, about the Dust Bowl, and I remember calling her up afterwards, and it amazed me at how, at that time she had not read the book. I gave it to her, and then she read it, all the details that she remembered so vividly that I had never heard before prior to really the inquiry. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about my mother, is that she would come up with these stories that were told for the first time that were just so rich in detail. The family then, many of the people couldn't handle the Dust Bowl, and they moved to the Oklahoma, and they were called California, and they were called Okies.
He's the boy.
And what do you mean just read my That's not how. Okay, so one of the things that I think really was interesting is people would tell Okie jokes, and they were derogatory. They were about their simple living, and they were jokes of demeaning jokes. And she just bristled at that because she knew how honest these people were and how hardworking these people were. And she always carried that strong family value with her. And the other memory of this time, just to reflect about the poverty, is I remember her telling the story of when Thomas was going to work at the CCC in Northern California, Oregon, and that was one of the few jobs young men could do. And the family panicked, searched for 3 cents to find money that they could give a stamp that he could write back where he was. And they were just panicked. They couldn't find 3 cents in the house. So that's the type of poverty that we were looking at. She was lucky enough, though, that she graduated from high school, and one of the first people in her family community to go beyond 8th grade was lucky enough to go to college. And graduate. With honors.
Good afternoon now, I guess. I'm Carol Cummings, Virginia's youngest daughter. I'm the one that is the police chief for the city of Bothell. So with encouragement and support of the local banker, my mother worked as a hired girl for him, and she left for Southwestern Oklahoma University that she called Weatherford. We often wonder how she had the courage to blaze this trail for herself with absolutely no examples to follow. But she reflected on her college days as among the happiest of her life. She worked 3 jobs to put herself through graduating with honors and giving herself, becoming very anemic in the process. You see pictures of her at that time, and she has a waist you can put your hands around because she worked so hard and had so little food, honestly. But she loved the camaraderie of her fellow students, the beauty of the campus, the luxury of the dormitory. She'd say they always had fresh flowers in the lobby, and the stimulation of the education. The friends she made in college, she kept her entire life. They had a round-robin letter with the women in her dormitory, and it went around for 60 years. My mother was the last survivor. Then came the romance. World War II started, and that when she was a senior, and that threw everything up into the air. The campus was transformed. The young men that she went to school with enlisted. Almost all of the male students, she said, were gone within a week. And the dorms were commandeered to house soldiers from all over the nation. All over the nation, people from New York, California, came for military training in Oklahoma. She remembered looking out on her dorm window at hundreds of khaki-clad young men marching in formation to classes or meals. And she remembered all of her life that one of them stood out to her. When we asked what it was that she noticed about this one particular soldier, she said he was looking around with great curiosity and delighted interest in everything he saw. And that really caught her attention. My dad told me that he remembered seeing her in the cafeteria wearing a pair of green corduroy slacks, which somehow imprinted themselves on him forever. In any case, they met and the attraction was instant, powerful, and lasting. Our father, Joseph Cummings, was the son of Irish immigrants who moved from Brooklyn from County Kilkenny to Brooklyn. Some of us are dyslexic, some of us are not. I wonder if we can figure out which is which. My mother always described him as dyed-in-the-wool Catholic. This would be time to digress and talk about my mother's religious background. She was Protestant because of her family heritage, and there were only Protestant churches in her community. But she remembers her father taking her to every single church in the community, exposing her to the much diversity as he could. He was respectful and friendly to the many Native Americans. He took her to ceremonial dances so she could get a sense of that spiritual tradition. She was open-minded, interested in many different points of view, somewhat skeptical, and as unprejudiced as it was possible to be at that time and place. My parents could not have been more different. At this time, before the kind of homogenized American accent we hear on television and radio, they both had very strong regional accents. He was a yeah, New Yorker, fast-talking, witty, believing no story could be improved with a little exaggeration and alterations. She was a woman whose creed was never make anything up, never brag, get the facts right. She had an Oklahoma drawl that we can still hear vestiges of later on her answering machine message. They both said at first they literally could not understand each other's speech. But as my mother said, nothing could have kept us apart. They married within months of their meeting in San Antonio, Texas, where my dad was stationed for further training. So back to religion for a moment. When my parents married in 1943, she was required to convert to Catholicism, and she pledged to rear her children as Catholics. Those were the rules, and she abided by them, though she never lost her skepticism about some aspects of religion. But this parish that we're standing in now was a home to her and my dad for years. She loved the diversity of the congregation and served as one of the ladies who prepared food after funerals, as we are going to experience today.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Ann Cummings. I'm daughter number 3. I'm the special education teacher, the daughter that adopts children and has horses. So if you've heard stories, that'll set you straight on that one. We won't go into my early days when I was the bad girl, but we'll leave that.
We already know.
Okay, so my mother and father got married. and their great adventures together began. My dad shipped off as a navigator in the Army Air Corps to the South Pacific for the duration of the war. He was the first plane on Saipan, on Iwo Jima, one of the first planes to land in Japan after the surrender. Their first daughter, whom he did not see until she was 9 months old, was born while he was overseas. He came home safely to her. Mother and Daddy knew in a terrible way how lucky they had been because her beloved brother Thomas was killed in the war, and his brother Billy lost his life in the war. He stayed, Daddy stayed in the military. The Army Air Corps became the U.S. Air Force the same year that their second daughter was born. 3 years later, I came along. 18 months later, just before he went to Korea, Pat came along. It was just the four of us for a really long time until our youngest sister Carol was born while we were stationed in England.
She wasn't supposed to come along.
She wasn't supposed to come along.
As they've reminded me my whole life.
Because my parents had a trip planned to Ireland for us in a gypsy caravan. And she was born in June. We had to cancel the trip. We held it against her forever. Some of the places Mother and Daddy lived and that we lived together was Oklahoma, Texas, Arizona, Texas, Oklahoma, South Carolina, California, England, Tennessee, Illinois, California, Alaska, California, and finally Lakewood. And I probably missed a few. Each of us have stories about attending multiple schools. Sharon went to 3 different first grades. Janice went to 3 different high schools. Carol went to 3 different 9th grades. Pat and I went to 4 schools in our grade school years. So we all got used to going back to different places, different schools. There's a distinct culture and a way of living among military families that some of you may be familiar with. It requires a skill set of flexibility, a sense of adventure, openness to the complexities of new places and new people, and a fresh start every 2 or 3 years, along with some sad endings. Our parents loved this life. They were amazing partners. Our mother was impeccably organized. We all had braces, dancing lessons, piano lessons, Girl and Boy Scout troops, and many other activities, which she seemed to seamlessly find at the new place, meet, and sign us up for. She set up house, made curtains, sewed all our clothes, planted gardens, met and befriended the neighbors, and welcomed new people. Our home, no matter where it was Grand Central Station. She was adopted by many of our friends as their mother too. She always had room for more. We've heard from people around the world how they valued her advice, her beautiful letters, and her deep interest in their well-being.
I'm Virginia's oldest daughter, Sharon. I worked as a school psychologist, and I'm going to take up when our parents moved here to Lakewood, which is where they connected with many of you that are here today. When they retired, they enjoyed many years of travel and adventure. It's like they hadn't had enough travel, so we were always hearing that they were going off to Europe or to the East Coast or on their, with their van across visiting different people, and many of you they came to see. They also, of course, easily kept up with all of us and who we were marrying and who we were divorcing and who we were marrying, and children and families growing and crises and joys, always maintaining this even, calm, all will be well that we could rely on through everything that happened in our lives. And at the same time, always welcoming our friends, our new acquaintances, our new neighbors, and making them part of their family and their connection. In 2002, my father died, and we had his funeral here in this church, and I was telling Deacon Joe that I can't remember where we went for the reception because I was in such a hard place then. But that was nothing compared to what his death was for my mother. She said the only thing that kept her going was that she knew she had to keep keep strong for the family, and she did. She persevered. She moved forward as she had done all of her life. She never complained. She was very brave, and she flowered. So what we think about when we think about our mother is how much she valued people. She relished everyone's stories and life journeys, taking them as her guide for understanding how life works. She remembered every single detail about everyone because she knew those details added up to a full picture and deeper understanding. She was very supportive and non-judgmental of almost everything except people who were dishonest or pompous, or anyone who didn't think women were equal to men. She lived through terrible losses, but she always looked ahead, making new friends, reading new books, thinking about new things, formulating new opinions. She rejected the idea of regrets, saying she always did the best she could, and that was all anyone could do, so why waste time second-guessing? I'd like to share a few directives that the 5 of us were brought up with by our mom over the years. They're little things, but what they demonstrate are her values, her courtesy, her respect and warmth towards others, and her passion for connection. Always walk your guests to the door. Never prop up a baby with a bottle. You have to hold them in your arms. Any house can be made into a home if it is clean and there are flowers. Women need women friends. They are treasures. Never return a plate or a vase empty. There is always room for more people at your table. Every place you live will have something interesting for you to learn. Say goodbye to the people you love like it could be the last time. Someday it will be. We all know how proud our mother was of her family. She was a true matriarch. She leaves not just the 5 of us, but 17 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren. Some of them are here today. I wonder if Virginia's grandchildren would stand up. And the great-grandchildren and their spouses, the grandchildren's spouses, would you stand? And the great-grandchildren? Thank you. This is her true legacy, her family. In conclusion, I'd like to share with you, all of you here who love my mom, and were loved by her, 3 important things that I have been holding in my heart these last few weeks to continue to live without her. Number 1, when you need to make a decision, remember that God gave you a brain and wants you to use it. And after careful consideration, when your decision is made, you never waste energy looking backwards, and you never whine. Number 2, take much joy and solace from all the beauty of our earth. Number 3, when it is time for someone to tell the story of your life, make sure it is a story filled with much love and many adventures.